take yourself back to maybe December or whenever you were kind of planning the first quarter of this particular year. Could you give us a breakdown of the way that you kind of structured your approach to make sure that your first quarter was as successful as possible?
I'll give you the mistake I made for a few years, and then I'll kind of shift to what we're doing today. So the big mistake that I would make was that I would set goals, right? I was always a goal setter, right? I would set goals like many of us towards the end of the year, right? We all do these New Year's resolutions. I set a lot of goals, but I didn't make it so specific down to the amount of calls, the amount of action, like the specific activities that needed to be done in order to achieve the goal. It'd be like, oh, my goal is to make, next year is to make 100 grand, right? Or $1,000,000, whatever the goal is. And I would do that all the time, right? I would say like, okay, well, to make $1,000,000, I got to sell X amount of properties at X average price point at X average commission. That's my goal. But then I never got like this is a number of years ago. I never got granular, which is like, how many specific calls does that take? How many leads? How many appointments? How many contracts does that actually take? And broken down up to, to the quarter, to the month, to the week, to the day, to say like, okay, what actually needs to be done every day in order to achieve it? Am I on track? Am I off track? Right? Like I was not that granular. And I don't think many people are. What we do now is that we are so granular with every single step of the way. So it's to say like every one of my salespeople on my team, I specifically get so clear. What's your financial goal, right, this year? Because everyone typically starts financial. And then even getting granular on where the money goes so they can actually understand why the goal is important. Because some people just say, I want to make 100 grand because they've never made 100 grand before, right? It's the most common goal people set when they get in the industry. We specifically map out, if they go, hey, I want to make 200 grand, where is all 200 going? You got taxes. You got to pay your rent or wherever you live, your mortgage, right? You got to pay all these other bills. What's your, how much is your monthly bills? So, and then after taxes, how much are you left with? Well, I'm only, hypothetically, someone who only says they want to make 100 grand. Their rent is $4,000 a month. Their car payments, their bills, all their personal life, it charges them $7,000 a month, right? All that $7,000. It's like, okay, well, $7,000 times 12 is what? $84,000 a year, right? 84 grand a year. To make 100 after taxes is only like 70 grand. That's actually not enough to even pay your bills. And yeah, sure, most real estate agents try to write off absolutely everything, and because they don't want to show any incomes because they can't afford to pay their taxes. What's interesting here is like it's seriously getting that granular. And I was never that granular up until the last few years, which is meeting with several incredibly successful people, which is what you do not track cannot grow. If you want something to grow, you must track it, track the progress, track the activity, track the metrics. You must track every aspect of it. It's like if you want to lose weight and you never step foot on the scale, what are you guessing? The only metric that they have is literally checking their bank account. They just look at their bank account every once in a while. And some of you are so scared to even look at your bank account because there's nothing in there. If you do not look at it, it will not grow. And so it's just this downward spiral versus an upward spiral. So it's being that intentional with you, the way you set goals, and the way that you are constantly having meetings, whether it's with yourself, CEO time. I talk about this on in my coaching program, which is CEO time with yourself, weekly accountability time with you and you, okay, or your management team once you have a company, which is 30 minutes every week, sometimes a little less, sometimes a little more. But you literally sit down and look at all the metrics every week. My goal to make $1,000,000, including me doing this amount of calls, this amount of conversations, this amount of leads generated, this amount of appointments, all these things every week. You've tracked it, you look at it and you go, am I on track? Am I off track? And how can I shift? How can I adjust today? Because what most people do is they just make it to the end of the year and they go, oh, I didn't hit my goal, and I wonder why.
Yeah, no, that's a great point. And really, even to that point, I'm in the same boat in a lot of ways where I've gotten better about tracking certain metrics to make sure that I'm able to have repeatable actions going forward. But I'm sure a lot of people fall short in that category. So obviously providing that type of context is very valuable for a lot of people. So I appreciate you sharing that. You referenced metrics and you kind of highlighted a few already, but I was kind of curious as to what metrics in particular that you're kind of focusing on. You kind of highlighted the calls as obviously being the driver. Obviously, the more conversations you have, the more it leads to potential business. But is there any other metrics in particular that you guys track? And then how does that extrapolate over a period of time?
Yeah, and I want people to hear this. And I'll dive into every metric we track, or at least as many I can remember off the top of my head real quick. But I want people to pay attention to the fact that if you're not tracking anything right now, which many of you might be in that position, to go from tracking nothing to tracking the next 10 or 20 metrics I'm about to list for you would be stupid, because you're probably not going to do it. I would suggest finding maybe 3 to start, 3 metrics. Track those 3 every single month without fail for 60 to 90 days. And then add 2 or 3 more, and then add 2 or 3 more. And then eventually at the end of this year, now you're tracking everything to a very high extent. And I even ask, what we try to do is that, for very busy entrepreneurs who can't, who are not tracking anything, we sometimes support them in our coaching program. We talk about specifically hiring a VA to support you with tracking metrics, because their entire job could just be making sure that the reporting gets done. So let's talk about the exact metrics. Let's just break, and I'm literally, because the cool part is that it's just the process, the entirety of the process, right? And you just break down every nuance metric wise, which is, it starts with, if some of you do paid advertising, but call it calls, right? Like I like to just break down to how many calls are you making a day? How many calls, how many conversations, which turn into leads? How many leads are you generating? How many appointments are you setting? Then from the appointments, how many contracts are you writing? My team tracks how many letters of intent are we writing up every day, every week, every month, every quarter, every year. How many listings did we pitch, right? When we spoke to a seller, how many times did we pitch a listing? What is that actual percentage ratio of conversation to listing pitched? What is the amount of contract value, right? So how many LOIs we write up? Great. What is the amount of contracted value that we wrote up this month? How can we continuously improve that number? You have the accepted offers, both the amount of offers that are accepted, the number of contracts that are accepted, and the value of each of those contracts, the amount of deals that are currently under contract, and have the value, the number of those contracts, and what the value of that is, and the commissions that those are all worth, by the way. The next step is how many deals closed, right? Like how many deals do you have that closed? And then the percentage of contracted to closed, and that ratio, because it's not always going to be 100%, right? If it is right now, God bless. Most of the time, we both know that that's not going to be 100%. Mm-hmm. Then obviously you have the tract of not only the number of contracts that close, the production value of the contracts that close, the commission amount for the contracts that close, the commission percentage of the contracts that close, and then the amount of referrals that we receive and the amount of referrals that we give out. Obviously, I just listed quite a number of them. But, again, we're talking about 20 or 30 metrics that everyone should be tracking in any business, because then the goal here from now those metrics is, like, the most important piece is a lot of it is just the conversion percentages, which is like, so because what you can do is you can find your bottleneck in your business so much easier when you literally just see it on a spreadsheet and go, oh, I'm having a lot of calls, but I'm not generating a lot of leads. Interesting. Why is that? Maybe I'm not using a script. Well, if I use a script, or maybe I don't have a good data set, and a lot of my phone numbers are bad, that could be why, right? Or maybe you're generating a ton of leads, but you're not getting a lot of contracts signed. Why is that? Well, X, Y, Z, right? Like maybe the ability of the deals that you're pitching, your pitching script is not great. You don't have great buyers to send these deals to. Maybe you're not getting a lot of listings for whatever reason, and you got to look into why, right? How are the appointments going? Well, my conversion rate on appointment to contract is like 3%. Why is that, right? Like, and looking into all these different pieces where you can literally find your bottleneck in your business, that if you just make a little bit of a tweak, you can all of a sudden double or triple or quadruple your company or your income, right? Your GCI, gross commissionable income. You could double it overnight. Like, this is how some of my coaching students are seeing a double or triple, quadruple in their business so fast, is because all I'm looking for as fast as possible, what's your bottleneck? That's it. Because if I can unlock a bottleneck, all of a sudden I can unlock a 20% growth in your business, a 50% growth in the business, 100% growth or more in your business fairly quickly.
100%. No, I couldn't agree more with you. And it really, like you said, it's pretty amazing the delta that you can achieve in just a relatively short period of time. So if, like you said, if you're making 150 or 200 grand a year and your conversion rate on leads is, call it 5%, and then you just increase that to 10%, that could double your income. If you like, the focal point on the actual metric is obviously of significant value. And so, I appreciate that. If you were to say, and again, we have a lot of people listening to the call, as you're aware, that are kind of newer in the business or just kind of establishing themselves in their career. So maybe they haven't followed this process for quite some time. You mentioned 20 plus different metrics, which I think is phenomenal, as you mentioned before. But what would you think are the three most important, that if you track them and you get 80% of the results, and maybe that's 4 or 5? I just wanted to kind of let you, spitball a little bit on that.
Best metrics to track if you're tracking 0, I would probably say leads generated, the amount of appointments that you're conducting or setting, right? If you're trying to get listings, and if you're just doing it more like me, where like I don't really go for listings, then I would not do listings. I would shift to just the amount of LOIs or true offers you're getting. It's one or the other. And then the amount of money that you're closing every single month. It should just be on a sheet, just like the amount of closings, right? So you just have leads, listings, or true offers that you're receiving, and the amount of money generated every single month. I'd probably start with those three, and then you can add the layers and start there, right? Because then you can clearly see it's like, okay, well, if I generated 4 leads last month and I made nothing, you're probably like, why is this occurring? Well, my leads generated is super low. Okay, great. Well, if I'm generating 30 leads last month and I had no listings or no offers, well, that's my problem. I have no, like, clearly, like, there's my bottleneck. I need to figure out why I'm not getting any offers or no listings. I clearly, my listing presentation is not great. The people I'm pitching to, I have not done a pre-qualification call. I've not vetted them. I have not asked a lot of the key questions. Maybe I don't have a script for that. And then specifically around the dollar amount, I'd be like, okay, well, if I want to make more money, then you go all the way back to the lead list and go, what am I actually prospecting? I only made, $7,000 last month. But like, okay, well, if I only made $7,000 and I generated 25 leads, where's the disconnect? Like what size properties am I calling on? What's my average commission percentage on those deals? Well, clearly, if you're, if you want to be, $7,000 is typically not enough for most people to live on after you pay taxes and everything else. It's like, okay, well, how do I increase my average commission percentage, my average deal size, my, like all these different metrics where like now it's like you can continue looking back and probably like those three should probably give you a good foundation to start.
That's great. No, I appreciate that. So to kind of provide perspective on a day in the life as well, to kind of, because again, you mentioned activity throughout the week, and then at the end of the week, you provide a kind of an overview. You look at kind of where you're at on a week-to-week basis, and you make pivots as it goes. So could you kind of provide us with context regarding maybe a week in the life of Henry Eisenstein and how you're kind of going on a Monday through Friday, and then on the Friday, or maybe you do it on the weekends. I'm not sure if that's when you take the time to kind of revise everything. If you could kind of share some insights there, that'd be great.
Most of the time, the way I'm just going to go for a day real quick. For a day, it typically is I have all my team meetings between 8 and 9 o'clock in the morning. Once that's completed, I will jump on the phones. I'll get on into my prospecting time, which is, so I start with the hottest lead follow-up, and then I'll get into cold prospecting for new leads. Then around somewhere between 12 and 1 o'clock, I have team meetings with whether it's professional partner, not team meetings, professional partner meetings, like my investors that I do deals with, professional partners who've referred me a lot of business. Some of my investors that I'm doing a lot of production with, between 12 and 1, I have like time to set aside specifically to get in touch with some of these people who I'm pitching deals to. Just time for literally just me to focus on business, working on the business, not in the business type of activity, right? Mm-hmm. Then from 1:30 till 3 o'clock, I have meetings with my team every day to discuss everything that occurred that morning, all the new leads that we generated. And that's typically where I'll end up submitting offers on between 10, 20, 30, 40 properties a day. So all the leads that we generated that day, I'll submit offers. Obviously my team's setting up a lot of appointments and conducting all the appointments then afterwards as well, right? So after the 1:30 to 3, they're now going to be all my team members, including myself, are spending time pitching deals to investors that like they generated all these leads in the morning. They're now going to pitch those deals or the leads that we've generated in the past that we have like basically off market listings or current listings. We're going to spend the entirety of the rest of the day trying to sell those deals, try to get as many offers as possible on our deals that we have. And then typically I have a 4:30 meeting with my team one more time, basically an ending day wrap. And the entirety of the rest of my day is to make sure I achieve my minimum goal, right? So today's been a little bit weird just because I had a lot of small personal things I had to handle. But this is a note that I have. All right, let's see if I can get it on the camera real fast. Hold on.
Yeah, let's see. If you want to read it off too for those who are listening.
So, okay, cool. Yeah. So sorry for the picture camera, the quality here. But I have the day of the week, obviously, to begin with. Then I have my goals for today. This is 2 hot leads, 1 true offer a day, 2 accepted offers. That's my day. That's my goal for that day. And then I have my goals for the year, which is $20 million in GCI, and I have my first $2 million month. Then I have a personal goal of 10 million cash in the bank. And then I have my mantra that I write at the bottom, which is win the day. So I write this post-it down every day. And then I basically take the entirety of the rest of my day after my 4:30 wrap call to basically say, did I check every one of these boxes, right? Can I cross these off the list? And if so, and don't get me wrong, there's sometimes we're at 4:30 or 4:45 sharp, 5 o'clock sharp. I'm done. I finished everything on my list. I'm good. My team's good. Everybody's handled. I don't have any meetings for the rest of the day. I'm done. And then there's some days where I work till 10 o'clock at night, right? Because I haven't accomplished these things and I'm going to keep going until I accomplish the goal, right? It's like, what's the point of writing it down if you're not going to commit to it?
That's great. No, and that kind of leads me to the next question, which I think is literally the most important reason for this call, because you can talk about tactics, you can talk about structure, you can talk about day to day, all day long. But at the end of the day, it's all about holding yourself accountable to achieving whatever desires you have. And everyone has different desires. I mean, you kind of referenced some of the desires that you have. That may be very different from someone else. But at the end of the day, if you want to live a life that you want to achieve, you have to set yourself up for that level of success through diligent and deliberate action on a day to day. So, on the accountability side, I mean, you seem like a very driven individual. So, I'm sure a lot of that is self imposed. But I guess what would you describe as your structure or way to approach the accountability process for the things you need to do on a day to day?
I definitely think I'm driven, but it's hard for me to keep myself accountable. So what I've found, and I've just found that intrinsically of just being in the industry, not the industry, but in business for myself for decade at this point, where I have found that it's actually better for me to pay a coach to keep me accountable,
Mm,
right? Because I need like third party accountability for me to
mhm,
perform at the highest levels. That's what's worked best for me throughout my career. I also have both paid and not paid. So like I have coaches that I pay for, and then I have accountability buddies. Like good friends of mine who make a ton of money. And we basically come together and say, okay, we're going to meet for 5 minutes once a week, and we basically just quick accountability call every single week, make sure that we're getting done everything that we promised ourselves that we would get done. Somewhere to like 75 hard. If I didn't tell anybody that I did 75 hard, which is drinking a gallon of water a day, 2 workouts a day, 45 minutes indoor, 45 minutes outdoor, no alcohol, no drugs, following a diet, and reading 10 pages a day. If I told nobody that I was doing it, if I did not do it one day, no one would know, because I decided to tell everybody that I knew, hey, I'm doing this. I had accountability partners. I had 2 accountability partners that were doing it. One was doing it with me at the time, close by me, and then another guy that it was actually in my coaching group who was also doing it. So I was just, everybody in my life knew I was doing it. So I could not screw it up, because if I went to everybody and said, hey, I messed up a day, I got to restart, then you get all the people going, oh, I figured, oh, like, oh, that makes sense, right? Like you get all these people who are like, they're going to give me that comment. I don't want that. I know I can keep myself accountable. And that's why I try to tell everybody my goals, everybody, everything I'm looking to do, because the more people I tell, the more people I'm being held accountable to.
That's great, and I really appreciate that insight because similar to you in a lot of ways is that some of the best accountability is just by telling the world about what you want to do, because you don't want to look like an idiot in front of people. Because obviously that I'm taking on this small development project, and I've been just telling everyone, I was like, hey, we're going to do this, blah 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 blah, and it's a long, complicated, long process. We have to raise money to do it. So the whole process, it wouldn't people would not be surprised if for whatever reason it just didn't pan out. But for me, like, I've already told everyone it's going to happen, so it's going to happen come hell or high water. It just is what it is. So having that level of accountability is an important piece. And you kind of referred to having friends within your life that you like and respect and can hold you accountable to doing great things. I have a mastermind group that I'm a part of. Once a month we meet up and we hold each other accountable to hit goals throughout the month. That's been extremely helpful for my business. On the coaching side, I don't think there's anything better that can replace having a third party be someone that kind of holds you accountable to doing things, to do the things you want to accomplish. And really, I've had coaches for years, ever since I think 2015 is when I got my first coach. And ever since then, I've been involved with coaching, and it's been game changing, unbelievably game changing. And again, it's just one of those things where, even having someone that you have to hold yourself accountable to at the end of the week is enough in a lot of ways.
I agree. I think people don't understand the true intrinsic value of a coach, which
Hmm.
is, imagine if we could squeeze the juice out of every ounce of your capacity. What is that worth? How much more do you think you have that you can do on a daily, weekly, monthly, quarterly basis or annual basis if you were just held a little bit more accountable in every aspect of your life? Because so many people don't realize that, like, every dollar I've invested in myself, hundreds of thousands of dollars in conferences, courses, mentors, coaches, you name it, every dollar I've invested in myself has literally given me a minimum of $1 to $2 equivalent per year, which is
Hmm.
insane in
Oh yeah.
value, right? Because it's like, if you invested 10 grand in coaching and it then allowed you to earn 10 extra $1,000 per year for the entirety of the rest of your life, I mean, that's 100% annually, on your money, which nothing else gives you, but investing in yourself can, in your wisdom, right? What is that worth, right? People blindly invest $100,000 minimum typically in going to college with literally no guarantee of return. And they see the value there because they've been brainwashed with the idea that they need to do it or they'll amount to nothing. but people can't think of or can't fathom the idea of investing 10 grand, investing in themselves when it comes to their business or their their mindset, their sales abilities, right? Their communication abilities, their negotiation abilities. And it's like every check that we earn is over 6 figures. What do you mean that you don't want to spend an extra 10 grand investing in yourself? It's like if you could close one extra deal a year, what is that worth to your business, to your life, to your family, right? To your community, to your charities you want to support, to the people in your life? What is that worth? It's worth a lot of money. So it's like the more money you invest in yourself, you are like an ATM machine. Every dollar you put in, you get multiples back. It's just, I think that it's interesting the people's perspective when it comes to coaching and mentorship, where it's like, I'll do it when I have the money. That's the complete counterintuitive. It's like saying, I'm going to get a personal trainer when I'm skinny and in good shape. The reason why you're overweight right now, or the reason why you're broke right now, right? Your business is not feeling good, right? You are not physically feeling good, is because you don't have the current accountability, and you don't have the, the plan, maybe, right? You don't have the, the specific things you should be working on in order to have the results you want in your life. Every aspect of one's life, you can, you should have some type of guidance and mentorship or coaching. It's not rocket science. Like some of the greatest CEOs, the greatest athletes in the world have coaches, and they've had them since they started. That's why they're where they're at, and why the people who don't have coaches and they don't have mentors, who think they could just tough it out on their own. It's like, what do you have to prove? There's no ego here. It's like the greatest people in the world have accountability. The greatest players of every sport, every profession have accountability players, right? Or people in their life that they're going to be held accountable to, coaches, mentors. Like, why, what's the, I have to do it on my own approach? It's like, it's okay to need support or even want support. I want support. I've never made $100 million in a year before. I would love to. I want to. I want to build, I'm working on, we're going to be launching a hedge fund. I've never built a hedge fund before. I need a support and accountability to do these things. I've never built a $100 million a year, real estate team before. I don't have $100 million under management. That's, I want $1 billion plus under management. I don't have that. So I need to find somebody who has it to give me the guidance. And sure, could I do it on my own? Could I tough it out? Sure. But why would I take the ability, like if I could hypothetically shortcut it by partnering with somebody or investing in a coach in that specific aspect, and it saves me 3 years, 5 years, 10 years, 20 years of aggravation, mistakes, financial and physical costs. It's like, why would I ever do that? I don't see the upside.
Well, and it's the compounding effect of those actions too, where it's like,
Exactly.
you have that mentality, you focus on one direction, and then you kind of fit the pieces to kind of get you where you need to go. And it doesn't take that long. I mean, when did you start in real estate? 10 years ago?
Just about 10 years ago. Yeah, 20, when I was 20.
10 years. I mean, you've been able to accomplish more than most people accomplish in their career within a 10-year period. But again, when you first started, you probably were not in that same mindset. You had a very quote unquote limited mindset, and over time that expanded, and you started bringing in new people in your life, and hopefully incorporating coaching and incorporating metrics in your business to be able to support a growing enterprise. And now you're in a position where you couldn't have fathomed that you were going to be in that position 10 years ago. So, I think that's why this type of message, in my opinion, is so important, is because sometimes you have to hear it multiple different times in different ways and from multiple different people before it actually rings true. And you never know when it's going to happen. It just all of a sudden clicks, and hopefully at that point you decide to take control of your life and make it for the better. So
yeah, and just the last thing we'll add to this is, sometimes it's not like you go to a coach and they say something that's so unbelievably unheard of, like it's so profound. But sometimes it's just the way that they say the same thing that you've always been hearing, and maybe the way that they explain on how to do it, or the simplicity around it, or the implementation of it, right? And they just make it so much simpler sometimes, where like, it's just exactly what you needed to hear, which allows you to actually see progress. Because my first mentor told me I needed to make cold calls. I was terrified of making cold calls. First year of my career, I never wanted to do it. Now I've made over 1 million cold calls in my career. I mean, my team makes 100,000 cold calls a month, right? So it's like, I was terrified to pick up the phone in this industry. And what I found was that because she wasn't willing to do it herself, this is something she was telling me to do: make cold calls, make cold calls. You should make prospecting calls, Henry. But she wasn't willing to pick up the phone herself. She didn't prospect herself. She didn't have a clear script for me. None of the systems were built out. And it's like, okay, well, me hearing I need to make cold calls, make cold calls, make cold calls, I did not even, like, it was still so tough for me to comprehend how it looked, what it sounded like, right? And then all of a sudden, as soon as I got the next team I went to, getting a mentor and a coach right away, they literally go, get this system, get this dialer, this software, say this script, call this lead list, do X, Y, and Z, and do it from this time to this time. I was like, oh, That's easy. And then all of a sudden I went to making 100, having 100 conversations a day in less than 6 months. And then all of a sudden I went from making less than $40,000 a year to 30 months later making $100,000 a month. I just did not have, from my first mentor and the first people I had spoken to, even though it's the same freaking concept. And again, this is just one little piece of it, but as simple as making calls, there wasn't a plan. There was not the simplicity of exactly how to get there, from place or a destination A to destination B. I didn't have any idea. Like, all these little things were just hyperbole. But once it was all written out and there was a specific plan to follow, I just did the plan and it worked.